And as an immigrant in this country, and I came from a family, obviously, with a lot of kids. My dad had substance abuse issues. I always felt like mine and my siblings' lives was sort of set up for failure. I don't think we were in an environment that encouraged us to be successful. We were in an environment that just encouraged us to do what we needed to do to survive. And I speak for myself and all of my siblings. We went above and beyond that. And I think because that was sort of what was expected of us, we went the complete opposite. And because we were in a foreign country, we didn't know the language. We just did everything we could to just keep going, keep going. And I think we all did fairly well. There's been a lot of challenges along the way, but I feel like with tech, I really found something that I'm passionate about, that I really love to do. I'm not the type of tech person that codes. That's not what I do. I'm more on the business side, where I can take ideas that are already exist and have failed and make them successful, because I am very organized, and I like to keep things very simple and not overcomplicate. And we can get into that later and why I feel that way. But that's sort of my story.
Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people around the world that are watching us, they say, we know where Canada is, obviously, and we know British Columbia. We know a big city in British Columbia is called Vancouver. Well, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our friends in Europe, 800 kilometers, which puts us in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west. A big, big province. Now, northern British Columbia in particular is unique. Prince George is about 80,000 people. Within 50 miles around us, there are probably 100 lakes. It is nature's paradise. Beautiful climate, a little bit of winter in the wintertime, summer not too bad, and then we have animals and wild animals all over the place. They are part of our companions in this beautiful region. We have black bears, we have grizzlies, we have moose, we have caribou, you name it, we have it. Now, between you and me, we don't want to tell too many people about it, because otherwise they all want to live here. And we don't want to get it too crowded. No, I'm just joking. Anyway. So today, a very, very interesting guest. Her name is Sonia Couto, and Sonia has a very interesting bio. Sonia is a seasoned tech entrepreneur with 18 years of experience as a software tech in the software tech industry, mainly dominated by males, I believe. And the episode will deal with the journey of turning a failed startup into a success story, as many are, and I have some to share there as well. The process to building a successful tech product company, common mistakes made by founders of companies, not unique to tech, but any operations. My journey, and then her journey with breast cancer was launching the startup, Empowering Women in Text. So we have lots of things to talk about, Sonia. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us a bit about your background of where were you born, and where did you get trained, educated, and then the start of your early part of your life, and then being successful in the tech, but also challenging with companies that were not quite as successful, and obviously it turned into something very, very successful.
Mm. So I was born in a little island that belongs to Portugal. I moved to Canada when I was 10 years old, so I've been in Canada all these years. I'm very Portuguese, but lived here in Canada all my life. I'm now in Toronto. I've been here for quite a few years. I started my career in manufacturing, really, and slowly sort of went into the accounting part of it. But I always really liked the operations part. So I went to school and learned supply chain management for operations. And I spent a lot of my early years in my 20s working for manufacturing companies, just organizing plants to be more focused on automation and not heavy dependent on people, which is good and bad. And then I sort of got into tech by an accident. A recruiter reached out to me and said, "There's this tech company looking for someone with your experience in accounting, operations." And so I went into this tech company and I just started learning as much as I could. I am the middle child of five kids, so I have two older siblings and two younger siblings. I'm right in between two boys, which I think was really good for me because I've always been in these really big male dominated industries. And I think that's really helped me because I can be a bit of a male sometimes. I can be in my masculine energy. And as an immigrant in this country, and I came from a family, obviously, with a lot of kids. My dad had substance abuse issues. I always felt like mine and my siblings' lives was sort of set up for failure. I don't think we were in an environment that encouraged us to be successful. We were in an environment that just encouraged us to do what we needed to do to survive. And I speak for myself and all of my siblings. We went above and beyond that. And I think because that was sort of the what was expected of us, we went the complete opposite. And because we were in a foreign country, we didn't know the language. We just did everything we could to just keep going, keep going. And I think we all did fairly well. There's been a lot of challenges along the way, but I feel like with tech, I really found something that I'm passionate about, that I really love to do. I'm not the type of tech person that codes. That's not what I do. I'm more on the business side where I can take ideas that are already exist and have failed and make them successful because I am very organized and I like to keep things very simple and not overcomplicate. And we can get into that later and why I feel that way. But that's sort of my story.
So that being said, is that your family was a typical family in the sense of we just want to survive, and then substance abuse in a lot of cases is part of families. Mine was in a way, and then all the kids in your family excelled beyond that, which is somewhat unique in the way, and it makes me wonder. I've been there, so in my story, but then what motivated you guys, girls, guys, to go beyond what you could have reasonably expected? Because you have to be able to go beyond that, which means saying, you never can do that, and that doesn't work, and this doesn't work, and all of that kind of stuff.
Honestly, I don't know exactly, but I think that it was because there was five of us.
Yeah.
So growing up, we were involved in all of this chaos as children, but we had each other. And
Did
my
you
older
stay
sister,
close as a
yeah, and we still
Yeah,
are. We
yeah,
we stayed close. We when there was turmoil happening, we had each other.
yeah.
We would support each other. We protected each other.
Right.
When my mom was absent, we had my older sister. And as grown-ups, yes, we're very close. We go to each other for help. We help each other. We're still in that mode. Like my nephews and my nieces spend Christmases together every year. They're friends. They hang out, even now as adults. So I really think that was part of the reason why we turned out the way we did.
Yeah, the ones that you can count on, right? That have no alternative objects, but other than the right ones, right? Being close.
Mm.
Now, the other thing that struck me is that health and fitness is so critically important in life, and you were affected by breast cancer. Can you talk about that
Mm.
a little bit? It's obviously devastating experience.
Yeah. So I had no history in my family, and I found out I had breast cancer when I was 38. And at the time, that was the best place. I was at my best place in my life. I had gone through a divorce. I was focusing on my career, and I thought like everything is great. And then I get hit with breast cancer, and it did change my life. I think at the time during my journey, I was very numb to it, and I focused my mind on work and having having something to look forward to, and that really, I think that's really what saved me, having a purpose to get up to every day that was outside of just breast cancer. Because let's be real, breast cancer consumed a lot of my life. It was like a part-time job. Um, but it wasn't easy to maneuver. But I kept my brain really busy. I think my biggest struggle was after I had been diagnosed. My diagnosis was that I was clear. I think that's when I struggled a little bit more because now everything sort of started sinking in. But I think my journey just I never thought I would get something like this, but I do think that it was a blessing in disguise. I wouldn't turn back the clock and change it, even though it sucked. But I think it really gave me perspective on life, on God, on who I am and who I'm not, and who I want to be, and how I want to show up in my life. Who, what don't I like about myself? And now that I'm like in this place where I'm really reflecting on my life and who I am, because there was a time where I didn't know if I was going to die. So I took a lot of time to reflect. And I really got to a place where I'm like, I don't like this person and these parts of me, and I need to change that. So when I was breast cancer free, that's what I started to do. I just started to focus on who I wanted to be, who I didn't want to be, and just start building that better version of myself. And I find myself, and people ask me this all the time, and they're like, wow, that's where you're at. People are like, what's your ultimate goal? Like, what do you want to achieve? And I'm like, I just want peace. I don't want, to be super successful and have all this stuff. And that's where I am in my life. I've gotten to a place because of the breast cancer experience where I'm just at peace. And being at peace allows me to say who I want in my life, who I don't want in my life, where I want to be, where I don't want to be, where I want to go. And so I get to make all of these choices that I know the end result is going to be bringing me peace.
So I also believe that through circumstances, whatever they may have been, yours one was one that obviously was very difficult because of it is the fear of cancer and all the things surrounding it that will impact your life immensely, not only then, but also now, and will always to a certain extent, is that to get to the point of who am I, whatever that may take, at some point, I believe that journey is very, very important. For me, I'm going to be 84 this year, November the 1st, actually. And so it took me a long time to get to the point, who am I? And probably into my 60s, And then the other part about it, and you touched on that, is who am I? But then to be at peace with who you are. And at peace meaning with me. And all the other things are not important. Well, important to me, but not relevant in terms of I do a lot of stuff. I enjoy what I do. One of the things that I will show you a little bit later, as there's a bit more of a story to it. It says 2547, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Is that attitude? I will always, from the time that I was young, I avoid negative. I will always be optimistic. No matter what happens today, I know it's going to be a better day tomorrow. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And then the other one is work ethic. I work harder than anybody. Even now, I used to get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed. And every day to me is excitement. And and I do a lot of stuff. I'm an author. I'm working on my 5th and 6th books. I'm in-demand keynote speaker. I'm obviously an active podcaster, and I'm not here to brag about what I have, but just to put it into perspective, I manage about 10 different companies, and and my life, the beginning of my life was in northern Holland at the beginning of the 1940, and a bit of a story around that. We saw far too much that we shouldn't have seen. Things were extremely difficult at times. I still was affected by PTSD and the NHL, had a counseling for that, and it took me a long time to get to the point, who am I? I failed grade 3. Nobody fails grade 3 that I know of. Although I gave a presentation to a couple hundred people, and way in the back somebody said, I failed. I said, okay, just the two of us then. And I failed grade 7 3 times. So, and then and my dream was, we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945. And I knew from that time, when I was 5 years old, I will go to the land of my heroes. And it took me until I was 23 until I did. And then I wanted to start with nothing, but I had a dream to build a lumber mill, and in the 2547 is what I had in my pocket when I came off the bus here in Prince George in July 1965. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times, $25.47. And started as a cleanup man, and all the. So now I have lumber mills, and I have a number of other things, and attitude, passion, work ethic, what will follow is success. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So coming back to you, is that the key became the tech niche that attracted your interest, and I believe you refer to that in your bio, that when you first started you dealt with a failing company. So tell us a bit about that particular story, because one of the books that I wrote is Against All Odds. That's the first book I looked. It took me 80 years to live it. And then 20 years to think about writing a book, because writing books, as you know, is not easy. And it took me 2 years to write it. And the book is not about how successful John is, but going through all the ups and downs, falling down, starting up, falling down, and all of that kind of stuff. But never give up, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I agree. You can't give up. I'm just very tenacious naturally. That's just, and I'm also very curious. And I was part of this tech company that had a group of people who had this idea, and I was part of that founding team, is what we call it. And I wasn't, as involved as I wanted to be, but I was there. We were building this thing out, and then really what happened was other people sort of led, and the product went in a direction that you know was trying to be successful, but it wasn't really being successful. And then what ended up happening was the founding team of this product ended up leaving the company. And I ended up being the only one left. And so now I had the decision to make if I was going to continue or if I was going to just scrap this product. Now, that product is health focused, and it's something that I was even back then passionate about before my breast cancer. And so, because I'm the middle child, I feel like what I'm really good at is managing hand me downs. Maybe not starting something from scratch, but I felt like this was a hand me down, and it made me feel like I have an opportunity to look at this and see what I can do with it. Can I be creative with it? Can I rebuild it? What can I do with it? So I spent like the first little while thinking about, okay, I need to sort of regroup and redo this. So I shelved the product for a bit, and then I put together a plan focused on it being successful with not just A and B in mind, but A to Z. And that meant rebuilding the product from scratch so that it could support the type of clients we wanted to bring in, because it had not been built that way. It meant bringing in completely different technology to build it. It meant having a marketing plan in place, a sales plan in place, a growth plan in place, a pivot plan in place. So I planned all of it out. And I also had in there, which was really important at the time, the pivot plan. So if all goes to hell and it's all failing, like how can I pivot this product to something else?
What is the
So
pivot plan? What does that mean? Pivot.
it's, if I'm heading in this direction and it's not working, can I still use that product and go in a different direction with it? So in this case, the pivot was just going to a different industry,
Right.
which which we had to do during COVID.
With your
But
product.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I just started from scratch. We had the product. I worked with the team. We completely rebuilt it, relaunched it with a much better product, technology, and a much better business plan. Because what happens is we were in the same place where a lot of tech entrepreneurs get stuck, which is they are inventors and they have an idea. They're not necessarily thinking about what's going to happen with this idea 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. They're just passionate about, I have an idea. I want to build it and take it to market because it doesn't exist and no one else is doing it. I think that's why a lot of tech founders end up getting kicked out of their companies by their boards because they don't have the capability to take the product to the next step.
Think Apple, and
Yeah,
so typical example where he was kicked out of the company, but then came back and obviously died too young. But
yeah,
he changed the world for all
yeah,
intents and purposes. Yeah.
yeah. And
So
he did amazing things, but he did get kicked out.
yeah, and it's typical for the entrepreneur, very good at ideas, but not operational necessarily. That is two different individuals. Usually, entrepreneurs are very good at getting something started, and then what, right? So, and then what is not necessarily the strongest side of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And the part that I'm really good at is the operations part.
Right.
So it was like the ideal place for me to be to take a product that had failed and really put it on a path to be successful. And that's what I've done with the product.
Now, the product that, just to make sure we understand, so what was the
Yeah.
product that had to do with technology? How many years ago was this that you started the new company?
Yeah. We started this about 2015.
When?
2015.
So
A
about eight
while.
years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
What comes to mind, Sonia? That's why I'm asking the question, because technology is, as we are talking about, and for myself in particular, I've gone all the way from telexes to, all the way through to iPhones, to computers, to on and on and on, and now AI, and on and on and on. So it is unbelievable the things that are happening. So, and then to be in that and see opportunity takes special talent, and to recognize it as to what it will look like, and then especially it is so large from a market perspective because it's global.
yeah, I mean, when we started out, we were focused on one industry only, and it was very specific. And we knew that there was a need in that specific industry because the way things were being done was very traditional and manual and expensive. So we knew that we were onto something. We didn't realize that there was another part of that industry that also had a need for what we were offering until COVID came along and we realized it, and that's when we sort of shifted. But really, the success of the product is we built it, we launched it, and we kept learning from it. One of the things I tell people all the time, a lot of companies, they build a board, and the board consists of directors and people who have been in business and done it. I did the complete opposite. I built a board that was that was our clients, our customers were the board, and it gave them an opportunity to speak directly to me and say, "I like this. I don't like that. well, there's a need for this in our space. Why don't you build it in? And so with that board, we got the opportunity to keep building the product and building it up and putting in features and technology that we knew the industry needed based on the feedback we were getting from actual clients. So the product became about building it as a passion product, but then it became about building it based on the needs that are required for it. So I think that's what really allowed us to be successful with the product, is listening to what our clients wanted versus putting in AI because it's so cool, or building cool features that nobody's going to use. And a lot of people go through that process, and then their products become too big, and clients get a little intimidated because they're like, "Oh, like I really need this, but this is a lot. Like I don't know if I can use this." And we kept it very simple.
And that's the key. Keeping it simple, not overthinking it, and then becoming intimidating, and hence no
Yeah.
customer base. Or so the other question comes to my mind, and I find this extremely interesting, is that I'm amazed by technology, have been from all the time, obviously when I grew up to now, and then being very involved even at my age, which is somewhat unique actually. I'm nearly 84 years young, and so I'm active in podcasting. And initially with podcasting, I started about 3-4 years ago when I did blogging. That was interesting. And then I started slowly to doing some things with a global television station, and we did small segments and podcasted then. I didn't call it podcasting, but was interviewing people on certain topics. And then COVID came. And obviously,
Yeah.
all that stuff couldn't be done anymore. So we said, okay, what do we do now? Because I love podcasting, but I couldn't go to the television station anymore because of COVID. And so I had this apartment downtown Prince George, and saying, well, let's create a studio there, and then we'll podcast people from around the area. A lot of interesting people here, but it didn't take very long. And then we were running respectfully, out of other people to interview. And then I have another apartment in Vancouver, and said, maybe we have to set up another studio there. The market is bigger. And then the more we thought about it, the more we said, if I look at television and the CNN, ABC, and all the CBC and all the other kind of things, I can see virtual. There is 1, 2, 3 people all over the world talking together and saying, maybe what we need to do is go virtual. And so we did that, and now we are probably doing 95% at least of all our podcasting are virtual. And it feels like, even with you and me, it feels like you're sitting with me on my
Yeah.
couch, side by side, and exchanging ideas. And I believe it's only at the beginning of where it will go. So far we have done probably podcasting, probably approaching 500 podcasts that we have done in some form or fashion, and doing them very, very regular. And then from there on in is saying, and that's why it is so interesting talking to you about this, because say, I'm the entrepreneur, where will it go from here? And where do we fit into that? Is it, but obviously being very, very, I think we're very good podcaster, globally, and very active. But where does it go from here? Especially some of the topics, very, very interesting, and we want to become more part of it. So my question is, where will it go from here? I think it will get much bigger, for one, and then platforms. I look at Facebook, WhatsApp, on and on and on. All the Facebook that we are familiar with is saying maybe platforming in some of the areas, because I believe that podcasting is the new news media. It's not newspapers. It's not a lot of times the television stations doing news and segments of this, that. I think that's all old news. We're going to the new news that includes the virtual, and will include a form of podcasting and platforms that are uniquely aimed at other issues that apply to all of us around the globe.
Yeah.
And I see that's where the opportunity is from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that technology is beautiful in this sense because it helps you achieve all of that, right? In years and years ago, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation. And it's so unique that we can do that now. And not only, you get the opportunity to talk to fellow Canadians from nearby, but now you can talk to people globally, and it's only going to broaden your audience.
Yeah. So because we podcast people from Africa, China, Central Europe, Greece, and the same day I may be podcasting somebody from Athens or somebody from Vancouver. And
Yeah.
and then the next day maybe from South Africa and China, and on and on and on. And I think what is so interesting about it is that podcasting has become unique and obviously is growing, and a lot of people are watching now, and especially the areas they are interested in, is that it has huge potential. So we have entrepreneurs, not only me, but searching for where does it go from here,
Yeah.
and I've been thinking about a platform even for us, and I'm actively looking in that direction. May even talk to you about it.
Yeah.
After our podcast is over, not necessarily today, but in the next couple of days, because what you do is unique and different. So another thing that I saw in your bio is that one of the things is, why do companies fail, or or what are some of the biggest mistakes founders make?
Yeah.
What are your views on that?
Yeah. Based on, the companies that come to us looking for either to start something from scratch or have something existing that's stuck. For me, in my experience, the biggest thing that I find is that because entrepreneurs are inventors, they get stuck in the invention part, which is, I'm going to build this, and I'm going to it's built, but ooh, I want to build this feature. And oh, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to build this and this. And then it's like 5 years has gone by and they're still building and they're still spending money building. And for me, I think the most critical thing to do is build and launch. Build quick and launch. Because when you do that, when you don't spend a lot of money and you build something small and you launch, you can start getting that feedback right away. Whether it's from a paying client or someone who just tried it out, you're going to get the feedback. And they're either going to say, love it, hate it, wish it did wish it did that. Have you thought about this? And I think that's really where a lot of founders get stuck. They're looking to take a product to market that's perfect. But if you look at like Facebook, for example, when Facebook launched, it is not what it is today. They have built it out over time. They built something, took it to market, got the feedback, and saw what people liked and didn't like, and then said, oh, let's do this to it and do that to it. I find that a lot of founders get stuck on those early stages, and we build startups with entrepreneurs and founders who want to build product, and they come to us and they're like, I want to build an MVP, a minimal viable product, which means you're building the bones, the bare bones.
Okay, just
And then,
stop for a second.
yeah,
MVP, is it,
minimal viable product.
and what does that mean in your mind?
You're building the bare minimum.
Correct.
Yeah, you're
And
just
where does
building
it go
something.
from here, right?
You launch it. You launch
Yeah.
it like as a beta
Yeah.
product. So it's not fully built. There's still a lot of stuff that you can do to it,
Yeah.
but there's enough there that will allow you to understand your market.
It gives you the base.
Yeah. So a lot of clients will come to us and say, I want to build the base. And we're like, great, fantastic. So one of the things that you have to do before you build technology is you have to document. And what we call that process is business analysis. So what we do is we sit with founders and we pick their brain about this invention that they want to build. We document the whole thing, and then we can create architecture behind it and all of that. And then all of that gets put together where developers can use it to actually build the idea. When we're working with founders on that process of documenting, we're working with the idea, we're building an MVP, the bare bones. But then as we start the process with the founders, they're like, well, I think I really need this in there. And I really need that. And we're like, no, 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 no. Now you're not building the bare bones. Now, this is going to go from a 3-month development to a 6-month. And now it's going to be to a year. And I think that's the area where founders really get stuck in, where they really need help having someone outside, encouraging them to, here, this is what you really need, and this is enough. Get out there. Don't spend investors' money on building stuff that you don't even know how the market is going to accept it. Right?
One step, one step, one step in a plan, in a direction, right?
Yeah. And keep it simple. Don't
And keep it
overcomplicate
simple.
things. Yeah. A lot of people like to overcomplicate things.
It reminds me again of the idea, when the war ended and we were liberated by the Canadian, my dream was to go to Canada, the land of my heroes. Then the next thing is, because I was not overly successful academically in Holland, became a furniture maker actually, and when I was 13, working in a furniture factory, then my dream became, kids can be hard on each other, right? So, all the friends that I had would go to colleges and to universities, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was kind of looked down at. And I always believed that I was just as smart as all the other ones, not better than, but certainly not worse either, but I was different. And so then I thought I had to start anew again. So my dream of going to Canada, I wanted to go when I was 17, but I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, which for a little bit more than 2 years. And finally, I went to Canada when I was 23. And I wanted to start with nothing, so very little money, suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I wanted to build a lumber mill. And I knew that the timber was in British Columbia. And so, but I didn't want any contacts, and I wanted to start from the ground up. So I arrived in Vancouver, landed in Montreal by plane in July of 1965, and then took the train across Canada from Montreal to Vancouver. My God, that is a long way. 4 days, 5 nights. Came off the train, went to the immigration office, couldn't speak English. Fortunately, there was a German fellow. I told him what I wanted to do. He said, Prince George, go to Prince George. That's the boom town. That's where the lumber is, timber is. That's where the opportunities are. So I knew then that I would build my own lumber mill. And so when I came off the bus, obviously, I had my $25.47. That same night, I had to find a job because I obviously had cash flow issues. And I started piling lumber, and then after that, became a cleanup man in the lumber mill here. And then my dream was to become a foreman. I became a superintendent, all within a year and a half. And then within 2 years, I was an owner of a little mill in the Yukon Territory, and of all places. Now, for those people, you will know where the Yukon Territory is. For our guests watching us from around the world and saying, hey John, where is the Yukon and what is special about it? Well, I went all the way to Watson Lake, Yukon, just across the BC-Yukon border. And that, as I said in my intro, Prince George was 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers. This one is double that size, about 1,000 miles. So this young fella coming all the way from Holland, where the climate is, but we say in Holland, if somebody asks me, what's the climate in Holland what's the difference between winter and summer? I say, in the wintertime, the rain is colder. that's the difference. And so in the Yukon, I saw 62 below zero. And if you operate a sawmill there, something that you don't even think about here as problems, there they are major crises. So I was there for 5 years, made it work, and then from there and left there. I didn't agree with the other shareholders, and then started my own companies from the ground up here. And I was good in lumber. I had a background in lumber. I loved lumber. I had the dream. I started off from the ground. Most of the timber was controlled by others, so I had to find a niche. And I did that, where I took shorter pieces of lumber, I glued them together, and everybody said, oh, that will never work, and this will never work. Well, it became extremely successful. Still is today, 50 years later, but I still plan to become bigger. And so in the meantime, started another company that focuses on warehousing and logistics and distribution, quite successful. And then another one in real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial and commercial. And so, but then media, and I've been amazed always by media, and hence, as I said earlier, I started podcasting and then saw this, and I'm very, very interested in the podcasting, obviously very active in it, and say, where do we go from here, and where are the opportunities in terms of podcasting? So I'm going one step at a time. I try to, well, I can't do it any other way, even if I wanted to, because then it's the ups and downs, but staying the course and never give up. I see now and all the other companies are doing well, but I see the opportunity now in media, social media and virtual media in particular, globally, and thinking about where do we go from here, and where do I go from here with my media company. Now, the interesting part about my companies is that I usually do things that other people don't do. So in the beginning, when I first started my company, I can't find any investors because nobody thinks I'm going to be successful. So I started on my own, and after I got it going, I don't need anybody else, and it gives me much more flexibility in terms of where do I go and what will it look like. So that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said. That I think the best, like, I'm not against going to school at all, but I don't have a lot of education, but I was very curious. And when I got into tech, I didn't know anything about tech. But, someone would leave the company, like a project manager would leave the company, and I'd be like, oh, until you guys find someone, can I sort of fill in and try to, help you guys out while you're looking for someone? And it got to a point where I had pretty much done every role in the company just because I wanted to learn. And another point that you said that I love, you talked about you were a laborer. Nowadays you go on social media, you talk to kids in school, like a lot of kids want to go towards being laborers. Not everybody wants this whole thing of being highly educated and sitting in front of a computer all day. Also because laborers are on demand and kids are like, if I go and be a plumber, I can make a lot of money because not a lot of people want to do it anymore. So I think there's a huge opportunity right now, especially in Canada, for labor.
And that's also the case in North America and throughout Europe, is that when I grew up, my grandfather, although I never knew him, he died before I was born, but he was a master carpenter. Being proud of being a master carpenter, I became a furniture maker, and I'm proud of that role. And so that trades, and I agree with you 100%, be proud of a trade. It's not just looking down on it, because it isn't. We have a major shortage of specialists and as laborers of different professions that it becomes. And in my case, the academic issue, I just have to share this with you because you may find that interesting, is that after I was here already for 32 years, in 1997, already was quite successful. And everybody would say to me, hey, John, you're so successful and blah, blah, blah. I didn't feel that way. I still felt inside of me, didn't keep me awake at nights, but I still kind of felt that I had failed in some form or fashion. And so then one day I walked into a store here, and it was in January of 1997, and I picked up a book. I still don't know why I did. The actual book that I have in my hand right now is the one that I picked up. And I opened the book. The title of the book is Driven to Distraction. And it was written by Dr. Halliwell. And the more I looked at the book, it was about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I started to go through the book, and I wrote in the book, and this is actually what I wrote in it. I did it in Dutch because it implied that is a mental disorder of some sort. Obviously it is, and I know that now. And I wrote underneath it, January 1997. And so the more I found out about ADHD, at least as it applied to me, then that the frequency of occurrence much higher than I initially thought it was. And then the more I thought about it, that for me, and I was then 57 when I picked up the book. It took me 5 years to go to my doc. There was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, and I walked into his office and he said, hey John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we looked at it together, and yes, I do. And so it took me from the time that I was 13 and starting to become a laborer, although I enjoyed it, but it was looked down at. It took me nearly 50 years till I found out that it was ADHD that affected me or benefited me, I like to think about. And I wrote a book. Then I felt I had to speak about it. I included more in presentations that I do, and I wrote a book about it. ADHD Unlocked, very popular actually. and so with some of these books, I'm going to sign them for you. I'm going to send them to you, all 4 of them.
Please.
And
I would love that, yes.
And so I believe now ADHD is a superpower. And then once you understand it and then make it work for you as whoever, then it can do amazing things for you. A lot of people say to me, hey John, how do you do all this stuff? You're writing books and you're a speaker, you're a podcaster, and you have 10 companies that you manage. I say ADHD, that's how I do it. So
I love that. That's so encouraging because I think ADHD for most kids feels like a hinder. It's going to affect their lives. They're never going to feel normal. But the way you just put it actually is perfect, because you're saying, no, I used it to my benefit. And guess what? Because I have ADHD, I could not just build one company. And I think that's beautiful.
The unfortunate part about it, Sonia, is that it took me 50 years picking up this book, Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, who is a medical doctor, has written 18 books, is globally recognized as somebody specializing in particular in that field. And he is an amazing individual and has also ADHD and affected by dyslexia. So am I. And so, and so that for the people watching us, your podcast number with me is 295. If you look at 203, On the Brink is a podcast with Dr. Halliwell. And so we had this discussion between him and me, and he's the expert. And I told him, he was already familiar with my story because I've been very vocal about it. And I said to him that I believe the frequency of occurrence from what I've experienced is probably not 8%, but more than 20%, that it's equal between males and females, although females present it differently than males do, understandably so. And he said, no, John, it's more than 25%, and I agree with them. The other thing that I said to him, at least in my opinion, is that I've been involved in all kinds of businesses and boards of directors and all that other kind of stuff. And I found that in successful entrepreneurs, and the operative is successful, and successful CEOs, that I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that I believe 50% of them are likely ADHD. He said, no, John, probably 75%. And I agree with him. So, hence, in September, I'm doing a presentation in Alberta for the Alberta ADHD Association of some sort. So I do those. Otherwise, I don't do too many keynote presentations because it takes 2 days for me to, and I like to go on these kind of issues, but podcasting much more effective because as you and me are sitting here interacting, we already know that probably 10,000 people will watch us. And that's the power of podcasting, so, that I believe, so, but it gives you just a little bit of back on my background. And then the other thing I'm just going to share with you, the last book that I wrote is this one, came out about 2 weeks ago. That's a picture of me, actually. I'm into health and fitness, and I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And I'm training again. At one point before COVID, I qualified for the Arnolds, and then COVID came, and so now I'm again training for the Arnolds in 2025. When I'm 85, it makes me the oldest competitive bodybuilder.
Wow, that's crazy.
I do it not for the fact of being a bodybuilder or an Olympian, but I believe fitness and health, as you, if anybody appreciates, is the most important part. If you don't have that, the other things don't matter. That's the most important part in life, to understand your body that is so forgiving in a lot of cases, but if you do not take care of it or not preemptive, then the last decade of life for a lot of people are not very good, and they get hands full of chemicals that are not good for their bodies. And so I'm trying to be proactive physically, mentally, and I'm very conscientious, thanks to my wife, actually, who's a vegan. I didn't used to listen well to her, but I do now, since I was 60, nearly died, actually. And so all of the things are important.
That's awesome. I mean, you're in your 80s, and you look pretty good for someone who's in their 80s. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and so hence that's why I wrote the book. That's why the picture of the book, and saying not look at John, but I'm saying simply that age, the number, is just a number. It's all about quality of life, and to stay fit. Even for those, they say, I know people in their 40s and the 50s say, oh, I'm too old, and I'm this, and I'm that. I said, no, start walking. Even if you walk 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day, and then I get to the point that after our podcast, I'm at the gym, and I do that. It's part of my life, and it's no matter how busy I am, that's one of my priorities always, and it's all about fitness and health.
I love it. That's fantastic.
So then, as we go forward, Sonia, and as we get closer to the end of our podcast here, I can do another hour or two with you, actually. So where do we go from here, especially as it applies to your specialty in terms of technology? Is so amazing to me, what I've thought and what I've seen, and obviously it is to you. You have been very, very successful. You have a podcast. How do people get contact you?
Yeah, so I actually have a website. It's soniacouto.com. And there you can find everything about my podcast, which is called Tenacity with Sonia C. And all of the different companies I work with, the work that I do. If anybody is looking to build a startup and you want to start it off on a good path and you want to work with me, reach out. I can help you sort of put a process together or a plan on how to achieve that. In my podcast, I talk to amazing entrepreneurs who have been there and done it, and it allows early stage entrepreneurs to really learn from those people.
And for all those people watching us, and that, to continue to hear discussions either from Sonia on her podcast or mine, but it's always important and encouraging to me, and as it is to you, to find subscribers that like what we are doing, then subscribe on Sonia's podcast as well as mine. Share it with others, like it, and comment on it. And that stimulates us to continue to find those interesting individuals from around the world dealing with different subjects and I do a very broad range of individuals on all topics, but some of the most important to me are entrepreneurship is important, business is important, but also mental health, physical health, obviously ADHD, and other things in terms of starting from nothing and being able to do it. Is that my foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic, and then the other part that I have to say is important, at least in my life, I'm sure it's in yours, giving back to the community and being part of community, and to build friendships as you have and your support team and around the world, and in particular in our particular field in podcasting. I love it, and we have a circle of friends that we will work with, and I hope to stay in contact with you. I will send you copies of our books. This podcast will come out either later on today or tomorrow morning, one of the two. And and then let's make sure we stay in touch. I'm going to contact you probably early next week or so, just to see where do we go from here. And then at some point, I would love to be, after I send you the book, maybe also be part on one of your podcasts.
Of course. Yes, let's do it.
Sonia, it was a privilege and a pleasure. Amazing podcast, and for sure we will stay in touch.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, John.
Thanks. Take care, Sonia.
You too.